Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here again. Um, in my first video, I talked about philosophy generally, and I said that philosophy is the love of wisdom. And I said that when you talk about love, you talk about commitment, talk about burning desire, and all that. Talk about passion. Then in wisdom, I talk about knowledge, talk about experience, and then talk about the necessity of living and examine life, which is an attribute of someone that has wisdom. Now, I want to discuss some of the branches of philosophy because, like every discipline, every intellectual discipline, philosophy has branches. First, you talk about metaphysics. Metaphysics is the study of the fundamental principles of reality. I don't want to go into the etymology of the word metaphysics now. That should be for those who are really studying philosophy as a full-time course. But what you should know is that metaphysics is the study of the fundamental principles of reality, the most general laws that underpin reality as a whole. So that, for example, a metaphysician will ask the question, what is the ultimate substance of which everything in the universe is made? And some will say the ultimate substance of out of which all the universe is made is material. We call them materialists, and the theory is materialism. There are others who say no, the fundamental stuff of the universe tends to be spiritual. Plato will tell you, Plato, one of the best known ancient Greek philosophers, will tell you that the ultimate substance are the forms or the ideas in the world of forms. We call those who say that the ultimate substance of the universe tends towards ideas, tends towards the spiritual. We call them idealists. Now, so you see that when you are discussing metaphysics, you are interested in fundamental general principles that apply to reality as it is. That is why you see that metaphysical discussions always concentrate on fundamentals. In fact, in current usage, philosophers talk about ontology, which are the what are called first principles, the basic principles that underpin various aspects of reality. So it is not metaphysics the way people understand it. When you talk about metaphysics, people are talking about the magical, the occult, what is secret. No, in philosophy, when we talk about metaphysics, we are talking about the fundamental principles, or if you like, the fundamental structures that constitute reality as a whole. Then you have epistemology. Epistemology, simply defined, is the theory of knowledge. And some of the basic questions that arise in epistemology include, what is knowledge? How do you differentiate knowledge from opinion or belief? How can we know? What can we know? What is the limit of human knowledge? Once you are raising questions, fundamental issues about human knowledge, you are in the domain of epistemology. And when we talk about knowledge, we are talking about, information whose truth or falsity can be determined as much as possible. So that you now see that in epistemology, when you talk about how human beings know, for example, two major schools of thought are there. The rationalists, who believe that the route to genuine knowledge is through the exercise of the rational faculty of reasoning. And you see that these are the ones that are called rationalists. and they tend to emphasize mathematics, logic, all those items of knowledge that have to do with reasoning. We call them rationalists. Some of the most prominent rationalists include people like Plato, philosophers like Plato. We talk about Spinoza. We talk about Leibniz. You know, these are some of the best known rationalists. Then, on the other hand, there are philosophers, there are thinkers who believe that the best way to acquire trustworthy knowledge is through sense perception, is through experience. And such philosophers are called empiricists. Some of the prominent empiricists include John Locke, talk about George Berkeley, talk about David Hume, you know, and there's a school of thought in philosophy called logical positivism. Quite a number of logical positivists are empiricists as well. However, as epistemology evolves and develops, there's a recognition that reasoning alone, sense perception alone, or sense experience alone cannot afford us trustworthy knowledge of reality. And then, so you see some philosophers embarking on what one may call a reconciliationist move. And one of the ablest philosophers in this regard is the German philosopher Immanuel Kant, who says that both reason and experience or sense perception play a role in the acquisition of human knowledge. But the key thing to note in epistemology is that it is a sub-discipline of philosophy that focuses on knowledge, how it is acquired, how it is justified, the question of truth, the limits of human knowledge. These are rightly in the domain of epistemology. Then you talk about axiology. Axiology has two major branches. You have ethics, which deals with the question of morality. And then you have aesthetics, which deals with the fundamental issues about beauty, taste. Now, without a doubt, ethics as a branch of axiology, which is theory of value, is very significant because all human actions are morally impregnated. There is no human action that you cannot ask, is it right or wrong? So, ethics is a very important aspect of philosophical activity, very important aspect of philosophizing, because whether people are conscious of it or not, all our actions can be subjected to ethical scrutiny. Of course, as I said before, we have aesthetics, and the fundamental concept in aesthetics is beauty. You see, beyond that, we also talk about taste. Now, human life will be impoverished if we do not have a concept of beauty, if we do not have the concept of values in terms of works of art. What is most valuable about art? What is it that intrigues us when we listen to beautiful music, or when we are appreciating a fantastic painting or sculpture? You see, you can compare aesthetics and lack of it to black and white television, and then the kind of television we have today. You can see that if you lack aesthetics, a sense of beauty, a sense of taste, you are like somebody watching black and white television. But if you have a rich and robust sense of aesthetics, a rich and robust conception of beauty and the value of art, you are like someone watching the most technologically advanced television. So it follows that as humans, both ethics and aesthetics enrich our lives in various ways. Then you talk about logic, which has been defined in various ways. It has been conceived, for example, as the science of reasoning or as the science of the laws of thought. But there's a definition that, to me, captures the central point of logical studies. And that definition was given by a logician called Ivan Kopy. He defined logic as the study of the methods and principles used in differentiating between good or correct reasoning from bad or incorrect reasoning. The father of logic, particularly in Western philosophy, is acknowledged to be Aristotle, because his book, Organon, can be described as the first rigorous academic treatment in the domain of logic as far as Western philosophy is concerned. Of course, those of us in this part of the world, we inherited Western philosophy as, the center of our pedagogic experience. Our education in philosophy is centered mainly in Western philosophy, although, of course, philosophical traditions from Africa, from India, from Asia, different parts of the world, China, are also gaining prominence in different Nigerian universities. So, Aristotle said that logic is both a subject in its own right and as an instrument for doing philosophy. In both conceptions, Aristotle was correct, because logic, of course, is a subject in its own right. And knowing full well the interconnection between logic and mathematics, as explored by Bertrand Russell and Alfred North Whitehead, amongst other philosophers, it is clear that the study of logic is indispensable in philosophy. Why? Because whether you are dealing with issues in metaphysics, ontology, issues in epistemology, issues in aesthetics, ethics, axiology in general, your arguments, your writings, your pronouncements must conform to the fundamental principles of correct reasoning. So that as somebody interested in philosophy, whether as a specialist or somebody who is just, you know, keen keen to understand the enigmatic discipline called philosophy, you must be competent to some extent in logical acumen. And thank goodness, logical acumen does not mean you must study logic, because as long as you have that level of intelligence that is distributed among humans, you can understand some of the basic principles of logic. So logic is key. Logic is central to the philosophical activity, because it is the tool with which philosophy can be done in a coherent, rigorous, and intelligible manner. Then there's another aspect of philosophy. You can call it an umbrella aspect of philosophy, which Late Professor C.S. Momo christened the philosophy of the infrastructures of discipline. Formally, this aspect of philosophical activity can be characterized as philosophy of X denoting any discipline or subject matter whatsoever. Philosophy of mathematics, philosophy of history, philosophy of language, philosophy of logic. People don't know. There is philosophy of accounting, philosophy of geography, philosophy of economics. Every subject matter under the sun, as long as it has an intellectual component, there is a philosophy to it. Because every discipline must be founded on philosophical foundation. Is there any wonder that when you reach the zenith of your academic attainment in any discipline, you are described as doctor or as acquiring doctor of philosophy in that discipline? That's what PhD is. Doctor of history, doctor of laws, doctor of architecture. Philosophy is the taproot. Philosophy is the foundation. Philosophy is the crown of every subject, every discipline, because it is philosophy that provides the foundation and also the crown on all the intellectual endeavors of human beings. So you can see that philosophy is extremely important for the intellectual maturity of human beings, which is why it has remained an important subject in various universities across the world. You know, there are some pseudo-intellectuals, those who I call those who don't understand what intellectual progress, intellectual maturity is all about. You hear some of them, some very funny characters disparaging philosophy, saying it is not relevant. What job can you do with it? You know, they talk. You see that these are ignoramuses. They are dotards. They don't understand that central to what it means to be an educated, civilized, enlightened human being is philosophy. And I challenge those who try to, denigrate philosophy. List the best 20 universities in the world and show me how many of them that do not offer philosophy as a subject. So, this idea, this obsession with what you study in a higher institution, the issue is employment, find a job. You have to be human first to be an employee. And who says you must be an employee? You can be an employer of labor. You see, the best route to enlightenment, the best route to intellectual maturity, the best avenue to achieve wisdom is actually to be thoroughly immersed in philosophy. So that it's not this obsession of getting a job. What can you see? You have to be humanized first. And human beings are works in progress. Every human being is a work in progress. And what can facilitate that is to fine tune, to rejig, is actually to reset, if you like, reformat the intellect so that it can accommodate the phenomenal, the incredible dimensions of the human condition. So that when people, begin to say, what can you do with philosophy? What job are you going to do? My answer is very simple. Just as it is said that man shall not live by bread alone. Man shall not live by bread alone. The question will not be, what else can be added? And my answer is philosophy. Philosophy is not just about philosophy, reading it in an academic institution. No, it is getting exposed to the manner of reasoning in philosophy and then having the philosophical temperament, which I've already characterized as being curious, willing to find out, asking relevant questions, and again, imbibing a healthy dose of skepticism. It is very important that all human beings should imbibe a healthy dose of skepticism so that when you come across many of these outlandish claims, particularly those emanating from religious and ideological sources, you will have that presence of mind to ask important questions, and then you should be also able to sift the wheat from the chaff. So if you ask me, what is the importance of philosophy? I will answer you. Philosophy is the best way to humanize human beings. That's the best way. Fine tune your intellect in such a way that you can understand not only who you are, but also your place in the scheme of things. If philosophy can nourish your intellect, if philosophy can remove the cobwebs of received superstition, if philosophy can make you prepared not only to ask relevant questions, but to be willing to change your mind, to change your view, to change your beliefs in the presence of better reasoning and good evidence, then I can tell you for a fact that you are becoming more human, a more enlightened human being.